Hey, everybody, welcome to People of Earth, Season 1, Episode 3. Our guest today is Paul Comfort, someone I have the privilege to introduce you to if you don't already know him. He is a staple of the transit industry and has branched out into a number of things beyond that. I first met him as a customer of mine and then later a colleague, and I've gotten to travel to multiple cities with him and unfortunately got to fill in for him during one of a conference sessions that everybody thought he would be hosting. And I cannot express to you the disappointment people had when I showed up and he wasn't there. So I can't wait to get into it with you. So I won't hold you back much longer, but my pleasure to introduce you to Mr. Paul Comfort.
Welcome to People of Earth.
All right. Paul Comfort, thanks for being on the show. Welcome to People of Earth.
Hey, Shawn, thanks.
So I really appreciate you taking the time. I'm creating this channel to be able to get to know people I know better and learn a few things that I certainly don't know because especially with you, you're a very busy man. So keeping up with you would be a full-time job, even if I didn't know you. Kick things off, I'll give a little bit of an introduction, hopefully make you a little red in the face. But I would label you as a pioneer of transit as a whole. Not just a leader within technology as you have been, but a leader in transit. And you're at this point global. You've now added podcasting to your list. I know you're a musician on the side. I don't know how many books you have at this point, but probably more than a handful, I would say. Because of the first two guests that I've had, I've decided to just leave this question in for everybody. I'm going to start off. Who's your favorite comic book character?
Green Lantern.
Nice. All right.
Yeah, I've always been a Green Lantern fan since I was a kid. I was really into comic books as a kid. Obviously, as I got older, like a lot of people, not everyone, but for me, it kind of faded, and it went to my kids for a little bit. But I had a pretty big comic book collection. I was always a DC guy, not a Marvel guy. I like Batman, Superman, and Green Lantern, the Justice League, all those folks. Of course, it's good timing now. David Gunn is coming out with a whole new, series in the movies now. Matter of fact, the night we're recording this, tomorrow I'll be going to see Guardians of the Galaxy with my 30-year-old daughter. We're going to have a daddy-daughter night, going on a date to see that. But Green Lantern, man, when I was a kid, I used to pretend to be Green Lantern like a lot of kids pretended to be whatever. All my friends, we'd run around the playground and pretend to be superheroes and all. We were in third and fourth grade, stuff like that. And I was sorry what they did with him in the movies. I thought that was not a great depiction of him. And it didn't do well, obviously. But I would say Batman would come in a close second. I've always liked Batman because he didn't really have any superpowers. He just was, using his own intellect and his own skill and his money. He had lots of money to work with, too. But anyway, so those are my two favorite.
Okay, awesome. So topic number one, when I think of this term, you are near the top of the list. You might share it with one other guest that I'll have coming up. But I think of networking. I think, when I think of networking, I think of you. I've never been anywhere with you that you didn't already know somebody. And I think everybody knows you, especially in transit, but I would certainly guess farther than that as well. But so I just wanted to kind of ask you a two-part question, which is, how networking has really fit into your life. Like, how much was that a conscious effort? How's that helped you in your career, and how much has it meant to you? And then I feel like this probably goes part and parcel with it, but how's that helped you with building your brand?
It's good. Good question. Wow, great. I've never been asked that before. That's excellent. So I would say, okay, got a guy working on another book, so I had to message him back overseas. He's working on some stuff for me. I would say that networking. So to me, networking is just friendships. And I don't view it like in a crass commercial sense. I view it more as I'm a people person. I think Shawn, because we've been on trips together and kind of talked about our personal lives. My dad was a pastor. I was raised very active in the church, Christian church, and developed a love for people at an early age, probably because my mom and dad were really active in ministry, and it's just who I am. And so, to me, the highest and best when I'm at my peak. You know how you can kind of analyze, hey, when I'm at a peak? It's when I'm at a dinner table with friends. They don't have to be real close friends. They could be moderate, like network friends, if you want to use that term, and just talking about whatever. That's when I feel the most alive, and at my peak mental acuity and connecting the dots. Here's an example. So recently I went to Los Angeles. I was asked to go to Los Angeles to meet with a fella in the mayor's office, the head of transportation, which I did. Nice guy, met him, met his deputy or whatever, and we had a nice talk. But I wanted to do more since I'd flown all the way from the East Coast to the West Coast. So I had some other meetings. But one thing I did is I wanted to put together a salon, an old-fashioned salon, it's a dinner party for an eclectic group of friends, and everyone gets to talk about what they're passionate about. That was the theme of the night. So I brought together 10 friends. I had somebody pick out a great restaurant, kind of half inside, half outside with the string lights. I love that atmosphere. Nice weather in LA that day. And we had people, from the paratransit industry. We had people from Commotion LA, which is a high-tech group. I had a recruiter there in the transportation industry. I had an ad agency represented, Pulsar Advertising. One of my dear friends, Alberto Gonzalez, heads an ad agency, which is one of the largest in America that helps public transit agencies, and a few other folks. Folks with LA Metro and some other things. And so, and a friend of mine that works with me named Mark Godin. And so we had just a 3-hour love fest, where everyone shared what was going on in their lives. We talked about what got them interested in transportation, what they were passionate about. And then what I love doing is connecting the dots. And so then I was like, so she wants to get moved from this job to something else. We've got a recruiter here. Talk to her about, how she can best position herself to move on to the next job, and the next level in her career. And over here, we've got this ad agency that represents somebody over there, and they talked about how they could work together and somebody else. So we spent all night connecting the dots and how we could help each other. Because that, to me, is the best of what life's about, Shawn. Just like you and me, we're buddies. And so I'm helping you with this podcast, and by me being on it, it'll help me. I'm sure,
Yeah.
people get to know something that they like, hopefully, and maybe say, oh, I'd like to see Paul speak sometime, whatever. So it's all about that friendship connection. That's what the networking is. Now, the question is, has it helped me? Oh man, has it ever? I've got a chapter in my very first book, which was called Full Throttle. It's my life theory, live full throttle. I've had to since learn to dial it back a little bit when you're in harbor, so you don't cause too much of a wake. Keeping the analogy going, But I have a chapter in there called "I Met a Guy," and it's the story of my career. And every job I've gotten is because I met a guy, and that guy then didn't know me super well. I mean, I'll give you an example. My very first job, right out of college, right? So when I was 21. Super interested in politics all during my teen years, very active locally here in Maryland. And I ran for office. I ran for county commissioner and Democratic Central Committee. And I won for Central Committee, but lost for commissioner. I guess people thought, this kid hasn't even done college yet to be county commissioner. But I wanted to make a difference. And so, but while I was running, I met a guy. This guy's name is Irving, and he was head of the Department of Aging. And we became friends. That's how it works most of the time for me. And when the race was over, he lost his race. I lost my race. And he went back to his day job. He never left it, really, head of the Department of Aging at the county. And I knew I wanted to work in government. Had been offered some jobs, but I knew I felt like I could make the most difference in local government. That's where the rubber hits the road. So he says to me, Paul, I'd love to have you come work in my department. I know you're interested in local government. I've got 2 jobs. One is nutrition coordinator. This person, that's the title, but they oversee all the senior centers in the county. We have 3 senior centers. You'd be in charge of setting up, making sure that the nutritionist does the menu and just overseeing the management of them. And the other job is a brand new position. I'm just starting. I just got a 1-year grant for it, and it's the transportation coordinator. We have enough vans now and enough drivers where we really need somebody to oversee it all, apply for the grants, and do all that stuff. I would hire you for either one of them. Which one would you like? And I was like, I don't know. Which one do you think I should take? And he said, why don't you try the transportation one? You know, it's new. You can make your mark, blah, blah. And here I am over 30 years later in this career. And
Yeah,
it's
too
been
bad
that
that didn't
story.
work out, huh? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. It's been that story, Shawn, over and over and over again. I mean, my job here at Trapeze and now Modaxo was because I met a guy. When I worked at WMATA, I met a guy named Jeff Czar. Jeff Czar was our IT guy for MV Transportation at the time I was working for. He later left and went back to Trapeze. When I capped off 30 years of my career, wanted to go into the private sector. I had a number of job offers, but he was like, Paul, you should come up. He called somebody at Trapeze and said, you should have Paul come up and speak at Trapeze's Global Summit. So I went up to Toronto. I spoke. They liked it. I spent the night. They had dinner with me at the top of the Space Needle with all the other leaders there. I got to chit chat with the big wigs in the company. And the next morning they said, we'd like to offer you a job. What would you like to do? And I said, I know exactly what I want to do in this next phase of my career. I want to write, I want to speak, I want to travel, and I want to help my fellow CEOs improve their transit systems because I had just come from being the CEO in Baltimore of the MTA. And here I am 6 years later, and Trapeze, now Modaxo, the parent company, has been true to their word. Now, like you said, they've given me a global platform to kind of do this on a broader scale. Um, so it was all because I met a guy or a gal, right? But in my case, every time it's been a guy actually. And so that networking is key. And I believe that, if I were for some reason to lose this job or whatever in the future, that it would be my skills, my innate communication skills and my connection skills. And I think, I'm on the life plan I'm on, I think is right. I try to be, not perfect at it, right? But I just interviewed a lady this morning for my podcast, Transit Unplugged, about this, about living your values, living your true self, living your passion, and how that is really, I think, that gives you power, right? And that gives you enthusiasm when you are aligned with your inner purpose. And so I think I would find, the next great thing, the next great adventure. I've had tons of jobs in my life. Most of my jobs last 4 to 7 years. So I stay there long enough to, get to know the lay of land, try to make a difference. I try to build a team. I've got a team of people that have followed me from job to job. Even here at Trapeze, I brought several of my team members with me, and now most of them have gone on to other stuff. There's still one or two here, but yeah. So networking. That's a 5-7 minute answer to your question, but networking
Oh, we're
is to
not
me
timing here. Don't
like
worry
that's
about
good.
that.
Yeah, it's real friendships,
Yeah.
not just uh, marketplace. I scratch your back, you scratch mine. No, I love people. I'm interested in you and your life and your family, and and what makes you tick, and how we can bless each other, and how we can work together to accomplish things. So anyway, and then it's actually every job I've had is because of someone I knew. Here's an interesting little comment about that. I read an article about that one time. It really interested me because it was exactly my life story about networking and how it works for jobs especially. And one thing that's very interesting about it was the article said that your next job normally does not come from someone in your close friend group.
Mhm.
It's normally someone in the next layer out, the secondary friends, not your best friends. We all have usually a small group, whatever, 1 to 5 people who are like our best buddies that we hang out with and all that stuff, go to dinner with our spouses or whatever. But that's not where your job comes from. You're already all integrated into their lives. It comes from somebody like the Irving Pinder or the Jeff Czar who says, I know just a guy. There's a buddy of mine so anyway,
Yeah.
that's my theory on all that.
That's awesome. I
Yeah.
appreciate that. It took me a while to figure that out. I would go to a, a conference or a specific IT networking event, and I felt like really forced. Like I needed to like have some kind of transaction, right? Like go and meet people and talk about whatever the subject was there, and it took a while for me to kind of click
Yeah.
into like, no, just go relax, have meet some people, have some
Well,
fun.
One- yeah, exactly. One
Yeah.
more comment on that, or a couple comments actually, if
Hmm.
I could. One is, uh, you remember I told you when I feel like I'm at my highest and best is when I'm at dinner with small group of people. My other thing that I really love is going to a conference and going into a room with 200 people in it, whatever. And I know, some of them, like you said, I usually have connections. I've been doing this for more than 30 years. So I have connections in especially in transportation and local government meetings. Um, and I feel like, Shawn, that I'm diving into a sea of my friends and I'm just swimming through. And the way that I connect is I'll go usually to somebody I know, right? Like we normally do, but they're talking to someone I don't know. And so then they'll introduce me. And then I'll start talking to the person I don't know. And I try to, I'm the king of small talk. So I'm good at, whatever the conversation du jour is, right? You want to, in my estimation, you don't want to go there and talk all about yourself, right? That'll bore people. You want to ask people about themselves, and I already know about myself, so I don't need to talk about it. I'm there to learn and connect with people, and if they ask me about myself, I'll tell them. But I want to know them. I want to get to know them. That's why when I go to a new city, that's how I met, a lot of my friends. I'll just put out on LinkedIn, I'm visiting Vancouver next week. If anybody wants to get together, just send me a note and let's have a cup of coffee together. That's how I met Mike Bismeyer, who now is a regular on my podcast. He reached out and said, yeah. And usually every city I go to, somebody will say, oh, great, let's go to dinner. Let's go to whatever. But swimming in that sea of my friends. The other thing I was going to mention was the LinkedIn network that I've developed. So I've been curating people linking in with people in the public transportation industry now for, I don't know, 12, 15 years, however long LinkedIn's been around, but especially a lot in the last like 7 to 10 years. And I've got like 24,000 people I'm connected in with. They only let you do 35,000. So I'm getting
Slow
up to it.
down,
And
Paul.
yeah, I know I don't want to burn them out, but I turn a lot of people down that aren't in our business. There's a lot of people that just are trying to do transactional business with you on
Yeah,
LinkedIn, and they try to connect with you, and I try to not accept their friend request because I don't want to use one of my one of my allotted slots for somebody who just wants to sell me something I probably don't want to buy.
yeah,
But I also find it very useful to use LinkedIn for networking. I'm serious. Multiple times every week, I'm reaching out to someone that I don't know very well, but they're in our network, or they're, or I can at least get to them by sending an instant message. Like, right now I'm dealing with a guy in Germany, and I'd like to invite him to be on a panel I'm doing uh, in a couple weeks when I'm in at UITP in Barcelona. And so I didn't have his email address, right? So I sent him a message on LinkedIn. He replied, "Here's the email address to send, your information to." So using LinkedIn as a networking tool, not to sell stuff, but to network, connect, all that stuff. That's another real valuable tool if we're going to continue the discussion on that topic.
yeah. Awesome. Well, I'm not. I'm going to switch topics on
Okay, all right, let's do it.
you. Okay, so
That wrapped it up.
I wanted to touch. Actually, it was funny you brought up passion earlier because it was gonna be one of the topics here, but I pulled it back. I figured it would just come out naturally, and it already has. So, um, but topic two, I've just got is starting something new because even as you were talking, I remembered a few things that I didn't say during your intro, but I'll try to put them in the little clip that goes before the interview. Um, but if I recall correctly, you were a burgeoning DJ at some point as well, amongst
Yeah,
everything else.
yeah. I did
So
16 years in local radio
yeah,
part time.
so I wanted to ask you, like, how much is starting something new part of your life when you look right now at like the fact that you have written all these books. I don't know how long you've been an author, but um, that you have been
6 years.
okay. Um,
Yeah.
being a musician, I know you will just randomly go play a gig somewhere. Um, whether it's planned or not, I know that you've improv some of those as well, but um,
Yep.
and you've had multiple careers, public, private, uh, as you said, like you kind of created this role that you're in now. So, you know, how has that gone for you? Are you just head first into whatever it is that you've decided to do? Is there a lot of contemplation and planning and prep that goes preceding those kind of leaps? Talk me through that a little bit for the multitude of things that you've gotten yourself into.
Yeah. I like to have a lot of plates spinning, and I always like to have something on the back burner that I'm working on. I like to have some. My mind will think about it. I'm a strong believer in how the subconscious and superconscious minds work. We're all living in our conscious mind, which is our five senses, right? Hearing, taste, smell, sight, and most of us spend most of our time consumed with what we can sense. But I believe that if you take time to sit still and quietly and kind of put your mind in neutral, like a lot of us do when we get in the shower, right? There's a lot of stories about and a lot of stuff written about how great ideas come to people when they're in water. And a lot of the great inventions and things like that, the ideas that come to people. I think there's something about being suspended in water, having water fall on you. I have a chair that I sit in my house where I literally, I mean, you can ask my wife, when I sit there, I like my mind goes into neutral right away. And then thoughts come to me. And every day in the shower, something comes to me, an idea. I'd say 9 out of 10 days, I get an idea about something, related to one of my projects I'm working on. I love working for a company that allows me to work on projects, kind of outside my official work. I mean, all my books, five of them now, is my fifth one, my cookbook, Comfort Food. None of them are like official trapeze or Modaxo books. They're my books. Now, I use them to promote public transportation and the best ideals of public transportation because that's what I'm passionate about. One of the things I'm passionate about. But they let me do all that. And so I don't, the way I come up with what I'm going to do next is I wait for it to come to me. I'm not a deductive thinker. I'm an inductive thinker. So my wife's deductive. She analyzes and breaks things apart and analyzes them. I am inductive. I'm constantly pulling things together, looking for trends. That's why most of what I talk about, I've spoken maybe over 100 times in the last 18 months at conferences and various things. It's always trends. If they ask me what would you like to talk about, I say I want to talk about the trends because that's the way my mind's thinking. I'm pulling together. I'm marinating in this information flow all day long. And then things will come to me. I'll see themes. I'll be like, like right now, hydrogen fuel. That's the theme I'm on right now. That's one of the songs I'm singing. One of the tunes I'm humming is hydrogen powered battery electric buses. We have a lot of people have really put all their emphasis on just regular battery electric, but hydrogen battery buses are where it's at now. That's the hottest trend right now. And so when it comes to me after I see and I analyze it and I sit and it comes to me, then I'll say, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to focus on that. So once I figure out this is the theme, I'm going to focus on hydrogen. Then it's amazing, Shawn. It comes to me. So out of the blue, the Hydrogen Council of America reaches out to me. I swear to you, I did not reach out to them. And they said, would you do a podcast with some of our stars who are CEOs of transit agencies to talk about hydrogen fuel? I said, absolutely yes. I've actually been waiting for this to come to me. And I feel like, and I know people may, whatever, say this is hokey pokey or whatever, but I feel like I'm in a river and I'm flowing with it. And I think if I'm in the flow, if I'm in the zone, as athletes, pro athletes will say, for Michael Jordan or other, when you're in the zone, man, I've seen Michael Jordan when he was playing, uh, you know, dominate the court, drive down as if there were no defenders and throw the ball down and score and make, 30, 40 points a game. Just complete domination because he was in the zone. And that's where I want to be. I want to be in the zone. I think when I'm aligned with my core purposes and I'm aligned with my passions and I'm internally congruent, that I am in a place where I can receive all this information that's coming to me. I can analyze it and then come up with what I think are the right directions and the right trends or the right projects to work on. And then I move forward on it. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
It does, and
that's what I got to say about it.
I would say it's kind of on brand with what we were talking about before because literally what you're describing, walking into a room with people, hearing the stories and connecting the dots and figuring out how to pull them together is what you're doing with data on the same side. Is sitting there and you're pulling it all together and then you're figuring out what needs to correlate and then you're finding the focus of it and then going with it. So
Yeah.
yeah, it makes
Christian
sense.
Kent said to me one time, if that people who know Christian Kent, he and I have been friends since our 20s. He's real active in the transit industry. He said, if they strike you down at one job where you're only over one agency, you'll become more powerful than ever before, using the Star Wars analogy, right? With
Yeah.
Obi-Wan, since you have all the Star
Never
Wars
heard of
stuff.
that,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So,
He
but
was one
I feel
modder,
like
right?
that's
for a while.
Yeah, I
Okay.
feel like that's where I'm at sort of now. I'm able to help a lot of people. People listen to this podcast and the TV show and my speeches, and they tell me, this is great. This is just, everywhere I go. So I'm able to like shine a light on what I think are the latest trends or the hot practices or the best practices, I guess the word I'm looking for, best practices in transit agencies. For instance, I'm in Dubai and I'm there to speak at the, last year to speak at the UITP MENA conference, Middle East North Africa conference. And I also going to do an episode of our TV show where I interview the head of the Dubai transit system, the RTA. And so I interview him, and little did I know that, dude, they have 11,000 taxi cabs in the city of Dubai. Half of them are owned by the government. All of them have Trapeze mobile data terminals in them, which is kind of cool. It says it right on every taxi cab, our logos in there, every cab. But I find out that they actually use those mobile data terminals and GPS to track every taxi cab in their operations control center for the transit system. And they consider them part of the overall transit or mobility network. And they can deploy them if there's a big event, a sporting event. They'll send, 500 cabs over there to get people, and they can tell them this is going on. You all need to go over there. There's going to be a lot of people coming out around 9 p.m. tonight. That kind of, and I come back, I'm like, dude, that is the best practice. I don't know
Yeah.
that that's happening anywhere in America. So I come
Hmm.
back and start talking about it. I mean, I used to work for Yellow Transportation in Baltimore. We had yellow cabs, 700 cabs, and I had the transit sign. Never the twain did meet. What were
And
we thinking?
mobility as a service now, I would dare say, is trying to glue those things together, but it's not
Yeah.
creating something that's made of all that. So yeah,
Well, so anyway, that's how it works, right?
yeah,
We connect the ideas; they come to us from other people, and and then we try to shine a best light of practice, and we can help other people. And they're like, "Oh yeah, I actually don't need to create my own micro transit system necessarily. I've already got 300 cabs in the city. Maybe there's a way we can connect up with them, and they need to work anyway because they've been decimated by some of the transport networking companies. There's all kinds of potentialities there. Some people have done it, but a lot of people haven't. They haven't even thought about it because it never occurred to them because no one else is doing it. So if I can find it happening somewhere in the world and shine a light on it, then maybe somebody else, even if it's only 5 people, pick up an idea. That's good, right? It can help lots of people. So
yeah.
anyway,
That's why we're doing this.
yeah,
And I
exactly.
appreciate turning the tables on you because I know you're always interviewing others. So I
Yeah,
appreciate that I get to turn that around and then get to hear from you and some of the things that make you tick that way. And that leads me to the third topic, which is you know help me help others understand. So we see the 5 6 plates that you're juggling in front of you, but not the 2 or 3 that's behind your back. How do you balance it all? Like you said you've got to have that stuff going. So how does it keep you sane? How do you keep it from being too much? How do you
yeah.
find that right balance in your life?
So I would say, so I don't think I can do anything less than what I'm fully capable of. And when I'm doing less than what I'm fully capable of, I don't feel as fulfilled. I feel like action moving forward in some area fulfills me. My inner need for purpose is significance. I think that's what is at the core of many people's, if not most people's, heart. It's the need to feel significant, and so I have significance in my family, as you mentioned. I married my high school sweetheart. We've been married over 30 years. We have 6 children and 8 grandchildren, and so my life is filled with significance in that I'm trying to, you know, pass on and love my grandchildren. We just had them all over this last weekend. There's with that many people, like 19 people now in our clan. Every month there's some event, where we're all getting together, and usually every weekend there's some sporting event that some of the kids are in. So I'm with them a lot when I'm here. I'm basically lately on an every other week travel schedule. So I'll normally travel 3 to 4 days that other week to some city. I was just in Vancouver. Um, Last week I was in Miami. Next week I'll be going to Oklahoma, and 2 weeks after that Barcelona, and so it's about every other week. And we're doing our TV show or our podcast, or I'm speaking at a conference or something like that. Is usually what my travel involves, and I do my books usually at nights and weekends. I really got in a rhythm during COVID that on Sundays Either if I would go to church, it would be after church or before church, usually before, because I'm working with people overseas a lot of times. Or if I don't go to church, but I had like a Sunday date with this guy over, in India who was my illustrator for my children's book. And then I've kept that rhythm where I will get up on Sundays and I try to work 2 or 3 hours on one of my book projects. Or I may do it in the evening later on. It just is it's a good day when I'm relaxed and I can work on a passion project then. And, because we have cell phones now, I can almost do, I'd say 80% of my work I can do on a phone. I don't even need a laptop. I can do most of my work, my emails, my team's messages, calling people. I did meetings today. I was tired of just sitting at my desk here all day because I was on calls all day long. So I just took one of them, a long one, a 3-hour call. I took 2 hours of it on my phone, sitting in my living room where I could sit in a more comfortable chair, and relax. So I think that it's a balance of having, I have a real, I think, happy and strong home life, which keeps me centered and grounded, giggy, to my grandkids, and then something that I'm passionate about, and then it flowers, it blooms into all kinds of different, colors of flowers. So I'm doing, my regular job. I'm senior vice president and chief customer officer of Modaxo Americas, which is transit technology company. That's the parent company of Trapeze, Vontas, TripSpark, Route Match, all those companies. I don't know, it's like 16 companies now, maybe in all the Americas or something like that. And then I'm the executive director of the North American Transit Alliance, which is a group of all the 5 major contractors: Transdev, MV Transportation, the one that's based here in America, Keolis, National Express, and RATP Dev. Their CEOs formed an industry association during COVID to ensure that they could continue to operate and that the federal COVID relief funds could pass through transit agencies down to the contractors. I've spent about half my career working for contractors, so I fully understand. I'm an attorney as well. And so they asked me, because I don't work for any of them, to kind of oversee all the operations. So I'm pretty active with that group. We have a lobbyist in Capitol Hill. We're pushing for more funding around the country for transit and transit agencies. So I'm active with that. I'm an advisor to another company, and I'm working a lot with Modaxo's global partners. We have offices in Australia and offices in Europe and the UK, and I work with them on a regular basis to, do global events, webinars, visits there, whatever. I just did an episode of our TV show in Singapore. It was actually our most watched show. We had 25,000 views on YouTube on it. And then I'm working on, trying to get that show on local cable access channels in places like Miami and Nashville and Vegas, cities that we visited. We've got it on 1 or 2 of them, but I'm trying to build a network of, maybe 10 cities that will put the Transit Unplugged TV show on their cable access channel so that local people can see how cool public transit is. And it's kind of like a Anthony Bourdain show. That's another interesting thing. You talk about how I do it all. So I go through phases where I'm like interested in somebody, really somebody, and I dig in deep. So 4 years ago, it was Johnny Cash. I got super interested in Johnny Cash.
Can't
I
go
went to
wrong there.
Memphis,
Yeah.
yeah, Memphis, Nashville. Played his piano that he played in his last video. You're not supposed to, but I reached over there and played it anyway, and in the museum. And read his book Cash and read all kinds of stuff about him, listened to his music, got his albums, and I really dug into the persona of who Johnny Cash was. And I try to integrate lessons from these people into into my life, lessons from their life. And he was to me a true American icon, part rebel, part
Hmm.
patriot. And I love that about him. That's the way I feel I am. And then I moved out of that phase and went into an Anthony Bourdain phase. And I started consuming everything I could about the travel writer Anthony Bourdain, the chef, watching his shows, reading. I've read all of his books, all these books about him, and I actually decided that the television show that I wanted to start wouldn't just be about transit. As a result of watching all of his stuff, I decided that I wanted to, if I go to a city, like we just went to Vancouver, the current episode up right now is from Vancouver, TransLink. So I talked to Kevin Quinn, the CEO. I talked to some other folks on his team, but we also sit down and have a meal together. And we we eat some of the food from that region, and I'll have somebody tell me. The Hawaii show is a great example of that, where we went to Zippy's and we got to, he explained to me this Polynesian food and how it fits the culture there. And then we might do a little music, right? We'll go listen to a local band to play some local music there, and we'll put some of that on the air if we can, if we get the permissions for it. If not, we'll just show a quick clip of it or whatever. But I want to dive into the culture, the food, and the public transit. And that led to the cookbook. So I'm sitting down, at the Think Transit conference in Fort Worth last year, and Mike Bismeyer, the guy who I met by having a coffee, a connection, is sitting next to me at a dinner there. And he says, Paul, you visited like 60 different cities in the last 5 years for your podcast. You've probably visited more transit systems than anybody else alive right now. And in those cities, you've had some amazing meals at their restaurants. You ought to do a cookbook. Everybody, you're into trying to do food now, what you're doing. You ought to do a cookbook from your favorite recipes from each city. And I said, I'll go one better, because I'm always about the transit CEO. Having been one, I want to give them a chance to shine. I said, I will ask the CEOs in those cities that I visited to give me their favorite, if they have an original recipe.
Mm-hmm.
And it developed from there. And so it's over 30 recipes in there from, people like Howard Collins, who's the new Secretary of Transportation for Sydney, Australia, New South Wales. He gives me a recipe that's good for drivers to get quick on the run, and then Melinda Metzger from Pace in Chicago gives me a recipe that her family got from Argentina many years ago. That's also really good for drivers on the go. And then I put in a recipe from that, when I was 30 years ago, starting out, we would have drivers meetings, and we'd have cover dish meals back when you could do that, when the lawyers didn't rule it out. And she brought this thing called sweet potato fluff, which I loved. And she gave me the recipe, and we've made it many times. My wife made it to me over the years. So I put that in because it's a tie into transportation and in the kitchen. So one thing leads to the next. And that's how the projects keep going, right? You meet somebody, they give you an idea. It's based on something you're already doing. You're like, yes, that matches up. That aligns with my purpose. I can be passionate about that. And that's how I balance it all.
So
I balance
that
it by
makes sense to me. I got to ask you though, since you've made that relationship and how you got to a cookbook, I'm always excited and proud for you when you've announced something new that's coming out, but I'm rarely like shocked, right? But when
yeah.
you announced a kid's book for transportation, that one hit me sideways. So I was curious what led to that.
Yeah, that's a great question, man. So it's an easy answer too. I wanted to give my grandkids a book about public transportation so they could see what Gigi does for a living. And Tris, I looked and looked and looked and could not find one. There's
Yeah.
books on zoo animals, there's books on trucks, there's books on buses, but it's school buses and other kind of stuff. There really wasn't that I could find, and maybe there is one, but I couldn't find it. I went through Amazon and bookstores, couldn't find one. So we were during our COVID lockdown period at the time. COVID had just hit, and I was doing this worldwide speaking tour that I was doing over Zoom for this book over my head, The Future of Public Transportation. And by the way, I have an announcement about that if you want me to tell you later on about a new version of that coming out from a real publisher. But anyway, and so I said, you know what? I'll write one. I already had experience writing 2 books, and I'm not an artist. I knew I'd have to hire an artist to do it for me. But I researched, decided what I wanted to show, which is basically the title, Public Transportation from the Tom Thumb Railroad to Hyperloop and Beyond. So I went through from when public transportation really got going, a couple hundred years ago, and went into the future of where it might be going. And I went through each vehicle type and described how it was used, had pictures of children riding those vehicles, and then talked about, let's say the streetcars in San Francisco and how they work. There's I didn't even know this, but I researched it and found out, there's this cable. That's why they're cable cars underground. That's at the end of the street. There's a big barn with a big wheel in it, and it's turning. It's literally pulling them along this cable. I think that's pretty interesting. I think so we drew a picture of what that looks like. And I think that's fascinating. And it works for kids probably, 5, 6, 7 years old and up to maybe 13 when they might lose interest. But during that sweet spot, we can get them excited about public transportation and they can see themselves in the pictures on it. So that's why I did it. And
Okay.
UITP, I had them kind of bless it. They looked at it and thought it was great, and it's even been used by teachers and schools. And Shawn, I even had a lady from Nepal, the nation of Nepal.
Mhm.
Uh, she said, "Could I translate this into Nepalese?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." Amazon couldn't do it. They didn't have the language, whatever, to put it in there. But we somehow got it printed for her, or she did it. I don't remember exactly what happened. Maybe Amazon ended up printing it for her. I don't know. And she sent me a link to her on YouTube or on her Facebook page or something, reading it to school children in the nation of Nepal, all about public. I mean, that's so exciting,
Yeah.
the work that I'm doing is going around the world. They've used books like the one over my head and the APTA, emerging leaders. For 2 years, they gave that to all the emerging leaders as part of their homework to read about the future of public transportation. So the impact these books are having, I hope, is exponential. People tell me it is, and I hope it'll have an impact of, we want it to be the best it can be. And so if I can share what I think are some of the best practices, and somebody can pick it up from a book, or in the cookbook vein, uh, it's a showing you a different side of these CEOs, the personal side.
Hmm.
Everybody else gets to have a cookbook. I mean, athletes have them. People that work on morning TV shows, they have cookbooks. We're an industry too. I mean, we
Yeah.
should we should be able to celebrate food. And so anyway,
I do
that's
my
that's
part at least. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And as you can see, I don't mind a little food now and then
Yeah.
either.
I've got one last question for you, and this stems from part of why I'm doing this podcast itself. When I got into music and everything, one of the first things that I did was, I'm looking at the T-shirts that the bands are wearing. I'm looking at the stickers they got on their guitars. Who are the people that inspired them? So I want to give you an opportunity to just share with everybody here, who inspires you? Who would you like to put names out? You've mentioned Johnny Cash, you mentioned Bourdain, um, others that have inspired you, and people may not know the name, and may go out and look up more and do some research themselves coming out of this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the first name that comes to my mind, because I didn't know you were going to ask me this, but the first name that comes to mind is Mark Joseph. So, Mark was the president and the owner of Yellow Transportation in Baltimore. And he worked on recruiting me for like a year and finally got me to leave Laidlaw and come work for him and help him take his company national. And then he sold to a French company called Connex, which became Veolia, which became Transdev, and he was CEO of Veolia Transdev for 10 years here in the U.S. Really smart guy, visionary. I worked for him for, I think, 5 years as vice president of national contracts and then as kind of the general manager of 10 of his contracts in the Maryland, D.C., and Virginia area. And he brought in a lot of people that really influenced me early in my career. One guy named Jeff Hauser in particular was the chief operating officer. And Jeff, I had to do the P&L, monthly. I had 10 P&Ls, 10 contracts, profit and loss statements. So, you have to hit certain targets. And then he would send me all these written questions that I had to answer every month, which meant I had to really dig my nose into the books and understand what was going on in the numbers. And he was brutal in his questioning on paper. In person, he's friendly, nice, slap me in the back. But, his questions were like very pointed. I always, whatever, it's probably a flaw of mine, but I would take it personal. I'd get angry because he'd be really pushing me, that's not a
Hmm.
good enough answer. You got to dig in deeper. But when I left the place, I cursed him under my breath many times while I was working for him. But when I was done, I sent him a genuine, authentic thank you letter and said, dude, you've made me such a better leader. I really understand this now. The numbers. I feel like I understand almost every lever to push to get a certain result in a transit operation. And I wouldn't have known that had you not forced me to do what I didn't want to do, which is dig my nose into the details. And the other name I'll give is Leland Peterson. Leland was my boss at WMATA. For 5 years, I was director of operations for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority's paratransit operation, the fourth largest in the country, the largest single contract anybody had, $100 million. We had 12 garages, 1,200 drivers, 8,000 to 10,000 passengers a day at our peak. And Leland was my regional vice president, boss, and kind of I sat in his office for 9 months at the conference table when I first got the job. And he also was a very strong, I won't say ruthless, that's not the right word, but something, pointed leader, and brought out, the best in me as a result of that and really influenced me and made me stronger as a leader. And again, a lot of times I didn't like it, and the customer WMATA sometimes was difficult to work with. The people that were there in certain roles, not everyone, but certain roles. My buddy Christian Kent was there; he was always easy to work with. But uh, and when you're in the middle of the heat, when you're in the middle of the battle, you're like, oh, you're taking fire and shrapnel and all this, metaphorically speaking. But it made me feel like I could eat steel wool for breakfast. I mean, I got a stomach for grit. Every month I went to two meetings with customers who would spend 2 hours complaining about my service to me. And, we had to come up with the answers for them on the spot or shortly thereafter. And, just, trying to keep everyone happy. And Leland's advice always to me was keep everyone, I don't think you'd mind me saying this, mildly to moderately dissatisfied, because our company wants one thing from us, but the customer wants this, and we've got to keep it somewhere in the middle. And had I not had those 5 years experience there, which to me was the worst 5 years of my career. I mean, it really was a rough situation. Anybody that's worked there will tell you likewise, I'm sure, in the contractor perspective. But it prepared me for the job of a lifetime, which was CEO of the MTA in Baltimore that Governor Larry Hogan gave me. And I came in there really prepared, having kind of been in the depths of hell, so to speak,
Hmm.
and then rise, shoot to the top, where I was like, I was an ant in an army of thousands getting this thing done at WMATA, I felt like. And then suddenly I was made, um, whatever, the head of this big transit agency with $1 billion budget and, thousands of employees and all that. But I had learned in the bowels of the organizations, these two that I mentioned in particular. And so then when I got to MTA, man, I was ready. And from the first 100 days when we finally did our game plan of what we're going to do, Baltimore Link, and open the nation's first FM radio station run by a transit system, implement a brand new security safety program, which led us to be called to win the race of being the safest major public transit system in America with the lowest number of Part 1 crimes for the both 2 years I was there, and all the local Emmy awards we won for our TV show that we did, which kind of was a predecessor to what I'm doing now. We had a show called Commuter Connections. We hired extra staff. I hired the morning FM DJ from Mix 106.5 to be at our station. We brought in the Orioles and the Ravens to help us improve the image of the system, and we had the quarterback on the side of our bus. All the innovations that we did, the world's only first circular polar map for a transit system, all this fun stuff we did. It's because I had 25 years or whatever, 25 years at the time of learning in the bowels of these organizations, and then being able to take that and to the top. And it's a lesson for everyone, right? You want to make sure
Yeah.
you're ready when you get the prime time job. And I feel like because of the experiences I had and the beating downs I had over the years, it made me. I learned a lot, and so it made me ready for a big job. And now I've got the brass ring. I did it. I was CEO of one of the top 12 transit systems in America. And we did a lot of cool stuff, a lot of good stuff that's been recognized. And so now I've got entry into the club of CEOs in the agency. I remember going to those APTA meetings, and being in awe of all these great leaders, these men and women who I've looked up to, the heads of these, Philadelphia, New York, and then I became one of them. And I
Hmm.
was in the board of APTA and all that stuff. And so now I'm able to take those experiences of a career in public transportation and local government. I was a county administrator and elected county commissioner too, and the radio background and all that stuff, and integrate it into a job where I'm able to use all of that to help a higher cause.
Yeah.
And so this is the full circle. That's what makes me passionate, because I've had a life of getting ready for this. And now I'm able to do it. I work for an amazing, wonderful company that allows me and promotes me and wants me to do this, to be the face of their kind of industry ambassador.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, you were in a very esteemed position there at MTA, and but you were helping one agency, and now you're helping hundreds. So I'll wrap up and just say, Paul, thanks for being a friend. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for what you've been doing for public transportation for decades now at this point. So
Absolutely.
I
And we
really
didn't
do
even get to talk
appreciate
about
it.
all our fun trips to Nashville and or Memphis, for all those things we did, but we'll save that for the green room.
Absolutely.
Thanks, buddy, for having me on.